We are ready to go ahead with the panel discussion session 2 on frameworks for success, policy enablers to attract subsea and terrestrial fiber investments. Yeah, just sending someone to help. I'm just calling people in now. Gentlemen, having your kind attention, may I request everyone to kindly be seated. We are ready to go ahead with the proceedings of the next session. Please take their seats. Moderator for the session, Ms. Sonia George, Founder and Executive Director, GDIP. May I invite you, ma'am, to kindly take your place on the stage. And I invite our distinguished chair, Shri Rajesh Kumar Soni ji, DDG Carrier Services, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India. I invite our panelist, Shri Abdul Qayyum, Advisor, BB&PA TRI. I invite Mr. Survesh Chattopadhyay, Senior Director, Edge and Networks, STT Telemedia. Warm welcome, sir. Ms. Nina Cummins, Policy Director and Head of Connectivity Strategy Global Meta. And let's put our hands together to welcome our distinguished session chair, Shri Rajesh Kumar Soni ji, DDG Carrier Services, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India. We have on the stage with us our moderator, Ms. Sonia George, inviting Shri Abdul Qayyum, Advisor, BB&PA TRI, Mr. Survesh Chattopadhyay, Senior Director, Edge and Networks, STT Telemedia, and Ms. Nina Cummins, Policy Director and Head of Connectivity Strategy Global Meta. And we also invite once again to join us Mr. Vishwanathan Ramaswamy, Vice President and Head of Technology, Strategy and Planning, Global Network Services, Tata Communications. So good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. We now move to our second panel discussion of the day, themed Framework for Success, Policy Enablers to Attract Subsea and Terrestrial Fiber Investments. The session will spotlight the importance of enabling policy ecosystems and regulatory frameworks that can unlock investment, accelerate infrastructure deployment, and ensure sustainable growth in both subsea and terrestrial fiber networks, the very backbone of India's digital economy. And to chair this important session, we are honored to welcome Shri Rajesh Kumar Soni ji, Deputy Director General for Carrier Services, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India. Shri Soni ji has been instrumental in steering carrier services policy, infrastructure licensing, and interconnection framework, and is a key figure in shaping India's connectivity roadmap. And to moderate the session, we have with us Ms. Sonia George, Founder and Executive Director, Global Digital Inclusion Partnerships. With her global advocacy for digital equity, infrastructure access, and inclusion, Ms. George brings an international lens to connectivity policy and investment strategies. And we begin the proceedings of the session with opening remarks by our session chair, Shri Rajesh Kumar Soni ji. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia ji. Thanks to BIF for inviting me to this, I think, first ever submarine cable conference in India. to begin with, I'm DDG in Department of Telecommunication, looking after the national long distance and the international long distance communications. Presently, we have 19 submarine cables and 24 cable landing stations. And there are 4 more which are going to come up in 25, 26. And we always invite investment in the cable landing stations and the submarine connectivity. We have simplified the regulatory requirements for the submarine cable investment. You know, you are not required to go to our place or to submit application, to file clarifications. You can always do it at your home. We have a simplified portal called Saral Sanchar, and you can apply at your home to the international long distance license authorization. And then we also have a specified performer for cable landing station and the gateway, and you can always do it online. So, after all the clarifications also come to you online, then finally you need to come to our place only to sign agreement. I mean, so that is the amount of simplification which we have done so far as the international long distance authorization is concerned. Presently, we have 2.5 crore as the entry fee for international long distance authorization, which will be subsequently lowered down, and the requirement for this is given in the Unified License Guidelines. The guidelines are available on the net in our website. There is no onerous condition as such in the license also, except for that you require a LISLIM equipment, that is a lawful interception equipment. Now, we are also planning to make it what you call as a shareable limb. So if it is a shareable limb, then in that case your investment goes down considerably. Now, about resilience of the submarine cables, we have taken so many steps, and now we are in collaboration with the Ministry of Shipping, Ministry of Fisheries, and then the Indian Naval Hydrographic Department. We are making a cable corridor, actually, the submarine cable corridor, through which we'll be protecting our cables from the cable cuts. Normally, we don't have too many cable cuts. We are only having 4 to 5 cable cuts in a year, and we'll be further lowering down. And at present, we are dependent on the eastern side to the Sikoma, Singapore, and on the western side to E-Marine for repair of cables. But we are also looking for indigenous cable repair and laying capabilities. So these are the initiatives which we have taken, and maybe in future we'll have our own cable ships, and maybe if everything goes right, then we may have our cable depots and everything. So that's what is my opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Soni. That's really nice to hear. And it's a good summary of some of the items that we also heard from many of your colleagues earlier. So thank you all for coming. I know that we are competing with dessert at the moment, at the end of lunch, especially that delicious kulfi that you all have. It's very hard, but we have a room almost full. For you to know, Nina, who's online, I have the pleasure of moderating this session, and thank you so much for those opening remarks. I want to take the moderator's freedom to call attention to the flyer infographic that you have on your tables that summarizes some of the details that we shared in our presentation earlier. And I'm calling attention to that because some of the items that you mentioned and some of the suggestions and recommendations that you've been following are very much aligned with what's on that infographic. So take a look when you have a chance. But I have the pleasure of moderating the second panel with wonderful panelists and Mr. Vishy Ramaswamy from Tata Communications, Ms. Nina Cummings from Meta, who's online with us. Hello, Nina. Really nice that you made it virtually. Mr. Abdul Qayyum from TRI as well as Mr. Suvesh Chattopadhyay. Almost, from STT Telemedia. So perhaps when I ask you the first question, you can also say a few extra words about your work and your responsibility for those of you who haven't spoken yet. So I have to do the easy job here, which is asking good questions to make sure that we have a nice conversation. We're going to try to make the answers very quickly so we can have enough time to go through a good round of questions. I may also interrupt here and there just to kind of call attention to one thing or another. And hopefully maybe at the end we'll have time for Q&A from the participants in the room. So be ready for that. Write down your questions for the panelists as you hear them speak. And so I'm going to start with Vishy, who's right here on my left. We also just heard you speak, so I'm sure you have lots more to share with us. But I wanted to start with this question around the point that actually Mr. Soni just made, that India has an increasing number of subsea cables, but really not quite enough yet for the increasing demand that exists not just in India, but in the region, and especially compared with countries, as we mentioned earlier, Singapore, but also others, right? If you think about the size of the population, it's really just not enough capacity for the demand in a sophisticated digital market that India is. So what do you think needs to be done for India to overcome this situation and to really speed up not just investments, but creating an environment that will support those investments?
So in the short run, I think there is already, if you have to look at the capacity that we have today versus the demand, it's not going to be choking in the immediate future. It's whatever we talk about now is in the long term. Over the next 5 to 10 years period, what should we do now so that the demand that comes up out there is being met? I think that's how we will look at it. The first thing that, of course, the country is doing already and which is being done well is encouraging local, local content, local application, local data, data sovereignty and other things, which sort of in a way reduces to some extent the reliance of, international subsea cables. That's definitely underway, but I think that's not enough from a very long-term perspective. Few of the points that if you look at whatever we spoke before lunch break, many of those things are applicable to look at to encourage the investments out here. First thing, this is a extremely investment intensive industry, and typically the ROIs are long term. There's no immediate. It's not like 1 year, 2 year type of an ROI. This is a long term ROI business. So only a handful of companies probably would invest into this. Either if you look at it today, the telecom service providers in the country, the incumbents or the emerging ones, are tech companies like Meta, Google, etc. So those are the ones who are investing into this. So because it's extremely investment intensive, it is important to look at what sort of policy incentives do you give to those investments. because big investments and long-term ROI, it's essential to look at how, we spoke about it in the morning about, tax benefits that you can provide, making things easier for the companies to seek all the permissions and ensure that you're able to get rolling with the actual laying of the cable rather than spending too much time on looking at getting the clearances and so on and so forth. So I think that's the very, very first thing that needs to happen is the incentives and the simplification of the regulatory thing, right? And then also this has to be, you need to match this with the investments in the terrestrial network as well. Just the investment into the subsea network is not going to be sufficient. You need to strengthen the terrestrial network. So it's essential also that whoever is investing into the subsea cable has to build a robust terrestrial network, and also permissions to use subsea for domestic transport is another important thing. So a combination of all of these things is what would ensure that a company would come forward and put money into the new cable system and get into this business.
Great, thank you. So, I mean, I think that actually leads really well to the question that I have for Nina. So I hope we can hear you well, which is, I mean, given this situation, I think a lot of the vulnerabilities that the cables in India face are even more concerning, and the fact that so many of the cables in India currently pass the Red Sea and the South China Sea. I'm sure you heard earlier some discussion about those issues from some of the other panelists. From your perspective, Nina, how do you see, how can India diversify not just cable routes to enhance resilience, but also to address some of these geopolitical risks that are increasingly concerning for subsea markets?
Thanks, Sonia. Hopefully you can hear me well. If there's any problem,
Yes, we
just
can.
raise your hand.
Yes, we can.
So I will give you a little bit of a background, as you mentioned. So as you flagged, I currently work for Meta. I'm a policy director there and specialize in connectivity strategy. So Scott, who you've met on the ground, does all of the hard technical work, and I do more of kind of the philosophizing, I guess, and some of the regulatory work. So I'm a lawyer by trade. And when I think about this subject, I approach it from a number of different angles. So yes, I have my Meta hat on, but also I worked for the Telecoms Regulatory Authority in Bahrain for a number of years. And part of my role there was looking at diversifying subsea cable landings onto the island. And we heard a little bit earlier about Oman having quite a small population, but 14 cables. Bahrain actually has only 1.5 lakh population with 6 cables plus a road causeway. So this is something that is very close to my heart. And just on a personal level, I have been in the middle of what I would call vibrant family discussions. So my father was in the Merchant Navy on cargo ships and super tankers for over 40 years. So I'm very familiar with the anchor issues. And then my uncle was in a fishing fleet. So we had a lot of these family discussions around how you reconcile the marine side and the protection of that ecosystem with, for example, the needs of large shipping canals or corridors. So that's just a little bit of context. To keep to the minutes here, I think we talked about diversifying routes. We've heard a lot of different examples and good practices earlier this morning, and also from the good practices policy that you've published, as well as Chairman Loti mentioned as well, the ICPC. I think for us as a business, and from my experience over the years, I found that what does help to actually diversify those routes, but also increase resilience, is to have the right policy framework that sits behind that. One on the investment side, but also on sort of the legal side. So if I think about how I approach it, it's really the ease of ability to invest, to use, and to protect. So the cradle to grave type scenario here. And when we talk about doing the ease of business, I think there's some examples from different regions around the globe. One of the regions that I'm very familiar with, because I sit in Europe, is the European regime. And the way in which that is approached is to distinguish very clearly between those types of services which are used for public use and those types of services which are used for private networks or self-provision. And there, for example, there is a hands-off approach when it comes to requirements for any licensing or authorization. It's not to say it's a Wild West. People do adhere to standards, but there is no formal requirement. That makes it much, much easier to actually incentivize that stimulus or a catalyst of getting private investment in subsea cables, which then thrives for a broader ecosystem, including the backhaul ecosystem. I think obviously transparent and predictable processes is something which I've heard numerous times throughout the discussion here, but also from my time in a regulator. And we were often criticised as a regulatory authority by certain players for saying that, we hadn't been very clear that something was out of scope. And actually, we would have been having our hats on saying, well, maybe it's better not to mention it because if we mention it, people think it is in scope. But actually, it shows you that that can be a double-edged sword. So actually being very transparent, very predictable, having single point of contact. This is, again, something that I've heard numerous times. And indeed, in Europe, they are looking now at a draft proposal for a recommendation to actually increase subsea cable resilience and diversity. And something that they have flagged there is the need to have this unified single point of contact, not to necessarily get away with all of the different departments or stakeholders that have interests here, but to try and harmonise that so that you only have to go to one. They've also made very clear that subsea cables are critical infrastructure. They should be given priority when it comes to processing applications. So actually they should have the least administrative burden, but be processed in as fast a time as possible. That's something that isn't consistent across various member states. So that might help actually Europe try and address these administrative issues. Then really, the health of the industry. So really having this competitive environment as well. And that can be done through, for example, open access, which I know that was mentioned earlier in the session from Lightstorm, and having competitive, so very, very low or nominal, whether it's license fees, interconnect fees, fees for cross connects, etc. But I'm going to stop there, Sonia, so that you can keep to time and we can dig in a bit more as we go on.
Great, great. Thank you. You covered a lot indeed. And I think one of the points that you make is that all of these things actually increase the costs of operating and the costs of everything, like of all the activities in the market. So I'm going to go to Mr. Abdul from TRI, because I think the connectivity costs between India and other global locations are not just high, but on average much higher than for other countries. And given the complexity that Nina just mentioned as well, which increases, thinking about decreasing this disparity and decreasing these costs is very important. And it's not just about the capacity, but it's all of these other operational issues. So what do you think can be done? You are the regulator. Any ideas, any suggestions?
Thank you very much, Sonia.
Yes.
So before I actually answer to your questions, I would like put some points for the audience, so that my answer to the question can be rightly understood. As I have a privilege to have some data, isn't it? So we collect a lot of data from service providers. So I would like to share since last 5 years, voice traffic has gone down by 1/5. That it used to be about 40,000 million minutes. Today it is around 10,000 million minutes. And proportionately, we find growth in data center, by 20% annually. We see the investment coming in the submarine cable primarily from the content providers rather than the original telecommunication service providers. The capacity, the design capacity of the submarine cable terminated in India and the lit capacity. The lit capacity is about 1/3 of the design capacity. So if you see that, that means there is no capacity constraints. Still prices are high. So where is the problem? And if you see the compare, the landing cost is about 20% of IPLC. That international bandwidth is much cheaper, but the landing cost is very high. 20% landing cost is very, very high. It's not comparable. And you know, if a regulator try to enter, the industry say, no, 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 we want facilitation, no intervention, right? So, thing is, industry has to come to some level of understanding. The ISPs really, you know, they complain a lot because the prices are high. Prices are not high because capacity is not there. Capacity is very much there. It is that, you know, we need to intervene, and which industry really don't like. So one part of the industry who is providing facilitation charges, they are, you know, charging quite heavily as compared to what should be. Secondly, should it be a national priority for government to intervene? Perhaps it is very difficult to say in terms of intervention because we are not having any intervention in terrestrial networks, and so is with the case of international. Though we have fixed some rate facilitation, and there has been some demand from the industry that those we should look at those rates, and hopefully we'll be going for some consultation with regard to the prices. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's go back to the theme of resilience. Many of you already mentioned, actually, and so I'm going to go to Mr. Suvesh around resilience and redundancy. Again, a concern around not just the lack of resilience, especially the outages that are so common and far too frequent. And so the question to you is, what can the government, what can policymakers do to reduce the impact of such outages, and what are the kinds of actions that we should be thinking about?
Sure, thank you. There are three terms: reliability, resiliency, and redundancy. They are closely intertwined when it comes to submarine cables. And they are a critical aspect in submarine cable build, in submarine cable operations, in any subsea capacity purchase decision. Now, these things can be placed in two buckets. First, to increase the resiliency of an individual submarine cable. And the second is to make it easier to build new cables so more redundancy comes into picture. Now, both these options can be enabled, facilitated, accelerated by intervention from government through policies, decisions, and actionable developments. Let's first focus on how can we bring more resilience into individual cables. Why? Because if you see the market, all the Indian players have built one cable. New cables, one cable. But if the cable is cut, there is no resiliency. The customers won't like have a single point of failure. Given the fact the second cable investment is still some time away, some distance away, it is important to make that single cable resilient. Now, historically, we have seen, and everyone here must be aware, that most of the cable cuts or damages happen in the near-shore waters, which are inside the Indian territorial waters. And these are the maritime zones where a lot of ship movement happens. If India is supposed to chase an ambitious goal of increasing exports to $500 billion, of course, maritime traffic will increase. And with that, it will push up the possibility of accidental or non-intentional anchor drops, anchor drags that lead to cable cuts. So how to prevent that? That's a key question. And this is more for the Bombay side of the sea. Because historically, India has had maximum cable cuts around Bombay, and it's much less towards Chennai. So one initiative which I worked in other places is to create a dedicated corridor, maritime corridor, which is dedicated for submarine cables where the ships are not allowed to come in. This is, I have seen this in Fujairah, in Dubai, in Marseille, in France. These initiatives have worked over the years. So there is no reason why these initiatives can't work in India. And I think in previous sessions also this is referred to that, can we have a dedicated corridor which is dedicated for submarine cables, where submarine cable can come? There can be, even someone referred to pre-authorized approvals to be in place. So you don't have to run around for, someone said 51 approvals, so you don't have to run around for those approvals. That's one initiative. That's for individual cables. Now let's change the picture. Let's look at something which can add more cables. We want more cables to come in with more capacity. For that, we have seen that today all the cables are landing in Mumbai and Chennai. Even in Mumbai, it is crowded in Warsaw region. People don't want to even move out in the outskirts of Mumbai also. Same in Chennai. It's either one or two zones, Tirusiri zone and the other zone where the cables are landing. Now, given the private sector is not coming forward with the investment in cable landing stations, is it possible for government initiatives to put this into motion, to set it in motion, in a way that can government set up a string of cable stations? It has done. For the Canny cable, they have built a cable station in Chennai. For the Kochi-Lakshadweep cable, they have built a cable station in Kochi. And I read last week there is a plan for building another cable station in Puri, possibly for the Puri-Andaman, Puri-Port Blair cable system. So in this, if it has built 3 cable stations, it can certainly build 6 or 7 more in places like Puducherry, Vizag, Puri, Digha, Kochi, Goa. These are the cities which will become digital hub for digital and financial activities going forward. And the cable station acts as a seed from 2 directions. It will get the submarine cable developer interested to land their cable, or if there is a cable which lands in Mumbai, they can plan a branch which lands with a second landing. All these cables have got additional branching units factored in the design, and the branching units are available. They only need a viable business plan to bring a branching cable for a second cable landing. It has been talked about, it has been tried, but no one has really done it so far. So that enablement seems to be missing. So can this enablement in form of a seed investment for building a cable station come from the government? Not only the subsea side. If there's a cable landing station, every network builder or network operator will say, let me make this cable station part of my network. Whenever there's a submarine cable landing happens, I will be ready with the fiber network. This will, in a collective effort, collective effect, it will make it more, it will induce the enthusiasm in the market to bring in cable landings. Let's look at another initiative, government-centric. Government is building cables, directly or indirectly. They have already built 2 cables in recent past, Chennai-Andaman cable system and Kochi-Lakshadweep. When the Chennai-Andaman cable was being built, I had the opportunity to attend some of the discussions, and I said, why are you building a 4-pair cable? Build a 12-pair cable. Let government use what it wants, let defense use what it wants, but still they won't need more than 2 pairs. So the remaining pair can be monetized. But why? From Port Blair, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Bangladesh, Myanmar are about 1,000 to 1,200 kilometers. So if there's a high fiber count cable between Chennai and Port Blair, and fiber pairs are available, so any new cable developer can build just the Port Blair to the destination city, and this will bring down the cost of cable building by more than 50%. Somehow it didn't happen. Fine. Now there is another cable being built. I was told it is from Puri to Andaman. So I would request that the right representations are made to make this cable at least 16 pairs, if not 24. That's one. And thirdly, it's not just the submarine cable. When the submarine cable lands, the capacity has to be consumed in data centers. All the data centers are not in the same city. So for example, the reason why cables are not landing in Vizag is because in Vizag, there are no data centers. There's no consumption. You have to long haul the cable from Vizag to either Hyderabad or Chennai. So there has to be some enablement for some kind of incentive for the cables to land in Vizag and then be extended to these cities, either in the form of waiver of ROW charges. Could be some tax incentives, could be some other incentives, but there should be some incentive for people to land in Vizag and go to Hyderabad and Mumbai and Chennai. If you look at the global counterpart, in Fujairah is not Dubai. Fujairah is 200 kilometers away from Dubai. Marseille is not Paris. Marseille is at least 300 kilometers from Paris. So people happily land in Marseille, buy fiber pairs to go to Paris, London, Frankfurt, and it's such a standard practice. Why can't the practice be in India? Why can't the cable land in Puducherry and come to Chennai, or land in Vizag, come to Chennai, land in Digha, come to Calcutta? So that in some shape or form, this infrastructure enablement has to come from government. It has to come from incentive. But ultimately, it's money. Someone says, I spend a lot of money to bring a cable to Digha, but then Calcutta had to build 4 routes. If the distance is 200 kilometers, they have to create an 800-kilometer network to create 4 terrestrial routes from Calcutta, and the whole business plan falls flat. And no one really goes forward. So these are 2 things I would cover. And
Thank you.
do something in the next round.
Thank you. So Nina, I'm actually going to come back to you because I think this tension of, what drives growth in the Indian market, is it policy? Is it the market? Is it a combination of both? Where do you stand on that? Where do you think you have to find the equilibrium?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and it comes down to what previous speaker from STT was just saying, is that you've got to find those right incentives. And I think there is no one size fits all, and there's no one way of doing this. I think it's very much hand and glove with both market forces and government. It's sort of the chicken and the egg, which comes first. So for me, the starting point again would be that ease of doing business, that regulatory predictability. I think that is critical to actually incentivize private investors to come in. And then you have to work with government as well in order to find the different incentives that can then take that private investment, use it as a seed, as my colleague was saying, and then spur off from that additional further initiatives, particularly for local players to want to invest. So if I think again about some of the themes that were touched on earlier today, we're talking about, whether that's the licensing to come in, for example, for equipment, for shipping, for repair vessels, etc. All of those have to be factored into the cost of doing business. If the government is looking to actually develop further expertise here, this is something, for example, that has been identified as a gap in Europe, in that a lot of these cables, a lot of these repair fleets are non-European. So one thing that they have come up with there is to try and understand if they can promote the fact that subsea cables are critical infrastructure, that they're very important, and that they can maybe designate some projects of common European interest. So this would be, for example, to attract that investment away from these big cities and hubs, and actually to try and get them towards these other areas. Again, as my colleague was talking about Marseille, to have these sort of incentivize initiatives so that another ecosystem develops off that. And I think, with that as well, it's about developing your own technical expertise too. I know we've talked a lot about kind of the fleets. That's obviously going to take a while to get up and running. But I think, if the right initiatives are there and the right regulatory framework, it will make it easier to then have what should be a complementary, if you like, the old guard of those that are, kind of the more established players and can help with that education and expertise and lend that then to this new generation of diversification as well.
Great, thank you. And by the way, there's a case study about exactly this case that Nina was just mentioning and that Servesh also mentioned earlier from Marseille in the report that we talked about earlier. But Vichy, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you have that same perspective, or do you have a different take on these kind of balance between market forces and policy making as drivers of growth in the Indian market?
So there are it depends on where you want the policy intervention. So from the incentivization perspective, I would definitely look at whatever type of policy interventions that can happen. Like Suvesh said, even incentivizing people to move outside Mumbai and Chennai, and then set up cable landing in other parts, and providing incentives for people to do that. I think those are definitely interventions that the government should do from a policy perspective. But I wouldn't get that to come too much into spending government money on setting up any of this infrastructure, or even trying to regulate the pricing or I think those are things which should be left to the market forces to happen, right? So I think that's how I would say it. Wherever it is important as a policy intervention, yes, the government should do, and wherever it is a business part, it should be left to the business forces to sort of neutralize among themselves.
Great, very clear. So one of the concerns that many of you already expressed throughout the day today was the timing, the timelines associated with permits, with all sorts of different bureaucratic permissions, licenses, etc. And so I wanted to come back to you, Mr. Abdul, about that question. You know, we are told that it can take up to 4 years to get everything ready, for 3 to 4 years for a cable to actually be fully operational because of these kinds of issues. Not just investments, of course, investments take time, but also the permit process. What can TRI do to change that, to improve that, and to really change that picture of the timeline associated with these investments?
So, since the morning, actually, TRI reference 2023 is being referred. And in the reference, we have already given how to process the applications, right? Now, that recommendation is with the Department of Telecommunication, and they are discussing the matter with the concerned ministry, because everything doesn't fall under the DOT. So, and hopefully this will materialize. And I said in the morning by Mr. Sakya, he said that it doesn't take, as per his experiences, that it is not taking that much of time. It is being told that it takes about 3 to 4 years. But see, this is when you talk about the submarine cable, it is the one end which will be in India, the other end in another country, right? So to put together, it has to be seen that not only in India, but at the other end also, there should be policy which takes lesser time for licenses. So I have to just say for all those who are in the policy making, that particularly when we discuss submarine cable and satellites, we become something, we treat them as monsters. That's something, it is very different. It should be treated with a lot of caution, right? So that kind of mindset needs to be changed. We put, there is a, thing to monitor the traffic. That is the only thing that is required to be put, nothing else. Rest is same, whether you have a terrestrial optical fiber cable or submarine, nothing. There is absolutely no difference. Once we put the limb system, that's it. So we actually need to have a different set of mind, whether it is a submarine cable or satellite. They are all equal. They are nothing different than what we do on terrestrial networks. So hopefully, and I think with the discussion that is taking place today, we'll have a lot of policy improvements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry?
Shall I add to him something?
Sure. Yes, of course.
Adding to what Mr. Abdul Qayyum has said, so it is said that, okay, India takes long time to for permits, but it's just for your information that I read somewhere that USA is the second highest time taker in terms of permits. And I mean, we are trying to reduce the permits as low as possible. And it takes around, if I'm not incorrect, around 30 days for a repair vessel to get permits actually. And now we are, our next aim is to coordinate with all the agencies within the government to see to it that this process gets streamlined, and there should be a single portal. You apply there and you get the permit, and it should be done parallelly, not serially. So I mean, you may see the changes in the coming future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Suvesh, back to you. So, long investments, heavy investments, long processes, improving, of course, as we just heard, but the demand keeps growing. Lots of demand for faster, higher capacity, and so forth. So, how can we ensure that we can, supply and demand can come together? How can we make sure that we can meet that demand, but also at the same time ensure that the investments are taking place in the right areas also, where the demand is? Because that's the other thing. Often the investment is not quite where we were expecting it to be. What do you think can be done to address some of these tensions again?
Sure. Can I step back and just explore the term the demand is growing? So where is it growing? Let's look at three market segments. Enterprise customers. In India, still, I think there is a handful of enterprise customers who are buying 10G circuits. They're still in the domain of 1G, 100G, international private circuits. Even if you combine all the enterprise demand in the market, it doesn't account for even 10% of the market share. So enterprise growth in enterprise customer, whether because of AI applications or any other things, is unlikely to move the needle in increasing the demand in the market. The next bucket is the carriers. The carriers, there are two kinds of carriers. Carriers that have a large mobile subscriber base, where they offer mobile broadband service, and a set of carriers that they don't. The carriers which have a mobile subscriber base are the ones which have a large consumption of subsea capacity to provide the mobile broadband service. And if you take that into account based on what data is available today, they account for about 25% of the market. Now, where is the remaining market then? It's clearly with the hyperscalers. The 4 hyperscalers are present in all the new cables which are being built, be it CMV6, be it IEAX, IEX, 2 Africa Pearl, Blue Raman, and all the other cables that are there. And interestingly, these hyperscalers have remained below the regulatory radar because they want to ride on the license of people. But of course, they play a critical role in enabling investments. They bring investments. And by bringing investments, the cable is being built. They consume certain fiber pairs. But the remaining fiber pairs enter the market, are available for people to buy either capacity or as fiber pairs. So they are growth drivers in the market, as they are in the data center sector also. Now let's look at some initiatives which can help this further. One initiative which has remained sort of unattended is the development of stub cables. These are short-length cables that extend from the shoreline to the outer edge of the Indian territorial waters. These are low-investment cables. The telcos will be willing to take the risk of making that investment, but once a stub cable is built with all the permits and permissions, any cable can come from international waters, connect with it, and enjoy a cable landing. It's like providing India cable landing as a service. So if the right initiatives are taken, if regulatory policies allow a stub cable to be built, where you don't have to justify where is the other end of the cable going, whether it is free in the sea, anyone can come and contract with you. It will certainly it will first reduce the time to come. It will address the perception that we have talked about so many times that permits and all take a long time. It will address that perception because that stub cable will have the pre-permitted cable, if I may say so. That's one. Second thing is that once, as I said in the previous time also, when the cable lands, required to be backhauled. Now, what we have seen, particularly through the hyperscalers, is that the terrestrial fiber is not reliable enough. Even with 3 diverse routes, the required reliability is not being met. So consistent in the last 3 years, I have seen that every hyperscaler RFP mandates that you have to quote for 4 diverse routes, and at least 1 route must be on utility fiber. So that there is a surge in the demand for utility fibers. So we need some initiative for the utility fiber to be available at a scale. Today, the utility fiber which is available in terms of fiber, OPGW fiber atop the electricity transmission towers are very limited in quantity. And whatever was available is more or less consumed. So there has to be a policy which mandates that any utility which builds long-distance infrastructure, could be electricity transmission, could be oil and gas pipelines, could be even highways, should mandatorily build fiber along those public utilities. I'll break it down to even more specific example. NHAI, National Highways Authority of India. They're building highways across the country, and their Mumbai-Delhi highways almost completed. They have built the fiber infrastructure, but it seems that because of some indecisiveness, despite the fiber infrastructure being ready, they're not able to monetize it. Carriers and hyperscalers alike were waiting for the infrastructure to be available that they can make use of it. But because that infrastructure will give the shortest route between Delhi and Mumbai, it will be the most reliable. It's going on the central culvert of the highway, so there is no question of being damaged by civil works or other DCB movements from other occasions. But despite waiting for 2 years, it didn't come, and they moved along with other options. So if by some policy intervention, NHAI can be triggered to start leasing that dark fiber, it will immediately impact the ability to backhaul traffic from, say, Chennai to Hyderabad or Chennai or Mumbai to Pune and these kind of routes. So these are two initiatives I'm going to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are great. Thank you for sharing that. So it's time for your questions. So if you have questions, raise your hand. And do I have help with the mic? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm Pradeep.
Yeah.
This is regarding investment protection. So maybe this is one of the case. I belongs to a subsea cable company. We have 46 landing stations across the globe, and we have one in India. The thing is that the India cable landing need a valid ILD license. So we have one operator there, service provider. But unfortunately, that service provider goes to bankruptcy. And once after going bankruptcy, there is a resolution, arbitrary resolution protocol. I mean, the team comes over, and for last 10 years is going on. Right now, see the interest. The landing station owner, he is no more active member, is the resolution team. The cable operator can't do business here because everybody is losing interest. And the thing is that one of the OTT has a dark fiber inside that cable. Maybe, some policy that need here could be that one, the cable operator can acquire a license in India and acquire this landing station, probably. Or the unused fiber, put a BU in the international water, land at, through 2-3 kilometers away from this location. We tried that. So these are our open cable system came in the try recommendation. But I understand open cable system is only for the new cable that getting landed, not for the old cable system. So there is no migration. Maybe this is one of case. Don't want to, but probably, somewhere something need to be built in so that the investors still maintain their investment, some sort of a protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Maybe we'll take two. There's another one back there. Actually, there's two. Oh, there's many. Go
Good
ahead.
evening all. I am from PowerGrid Corporation of India Limited. Actually, during the last few sessions, there has been a discussion about dedicated corridors for these subsea cables. So what my question is there any possibility in future that in these corridors, power cable can also be laid? Because India, Sri Lanka, Paradip, Andaman, these are all subsea HVDC cables are coming. So once these corridors are being explored by telecom industry, will there be any possibility that we too get the opportunity to lay the cables through the same corridors? That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. So just one more, and then I'm going to ask each panelist to take one topic that they liked from the questions and answer quickly so that we can do a quick round for all of you. So just one more question. There were a few others. Please? Oh, actually, I'm so sorry, but I think you already asked the question before. Yes. Maybe one person that hasn't asked the question yet. You didn't? Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, as we talked about dedicated maritime corridor, so my question would be, so we have dedicated freight corridor also inside our country. So, isn't that limited to India or any country's exclusive economic zone, or how are we going to ensure or reduced network sabotage and data protection in the international waters, or that can be done only in the countries' exclusive economic zones? Second, as we are recently seeing so many wars and trade wars going on between different countries and different economies. So, how are you trying to make resilient cable networks, and how that will be protected against these external factors? So, thank you.
Thank you. Nita, I'm going to start with you online, and then I'm going to go through our panelists here in the room. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I give some observations. I think the point that was raised, it wasn't directly a question, but again, I believe it was one of the panelists had mentioned about the ability to leverage other utility channels as well. We had an initiative back in Europe, it's probably going back about 7 or 8 years ago now, called the Broadband Cost Reduction Directive, which was to try and compel utility companies across Europe to actually allow telecom operators to either leverage their existing cables that have been laid or to go along and lay cables alongside that. At the time I was working back in Ireland and working for the Irish government departments to try and incentivise this, I have to say it was something that we really tapped into, and we went out and had a procurement process to allow the telecoms operators in the country to compete to then be able to use what it was called AirGrid, the Irish electricity provider, to again make sure that we were being efficient with the use of resourcing, because as many folks may know about Ireland, you tend to have, you know, one or two cities, and then you have the vast amount of the population are in rural areas where there are it's just far too expensive to start laying optical fibre from scratch. So that was one incentive that has worked, but it has taken an awful lot to try and make the governments in other member states across Europe see the benefit of that particular approach. So I think it's certainly worth digging into and having a look to see if there's any other ways in which that can be leveraged more for India. In terms of the resilience, if I may then, Sonia, I know that we've touched a lot on these different zones, and we've mentioned about the cable corridors, and I think those are a great idea. What I would urge, though, as well, is to avoid sort of the, you know, just taking a blanket approach, because as we've noted, I mean, India is a huge country. It's got very different geography depending upon whether you're on east or west coast. And I think that may work for some of the landings, but maybe not others, because again, what you don't want to do is put all your eggs in one basket, go into cable corridors, and then you end up having what is essentially an extended single point of failure, because if anything goes wrong there, or you have congestion. So I think it's very much a mix and match approach, but I think it's a great idea. It comes on a little bit to what one of the last questions was about, well, what do you do when you get outside of the exclusive economic zone and your territorial waters? And I think that's where, again, Chairman Lahoti, from the TRAI noted the ICPC best practices, and I think they are absolutely excellent at explaining how this is really something where you need cooperation of a number of different countries, whether that's through the UN, whether that's through other international organisations. But we all have to recognise that increased, resilient, diverse and bigger capacity cables benefits all of us, and we have to sometimes put, you know, some of our national perceptions to one side, and we have to communicate with each other and see the common good here, which may mean, you know, having to sort of put certain issues to one side and actually just focusing on how do you make sure that the cable is protected, and whether that's, you know, sort of no trawling zones, no anchoring zones, whatever that might be. But that would be my observations on some of the comments.
Great, thank you. So, Vici, I'm coming to you now. In 1 minute, and I'm going to try to be strict about it, so Mr. Soni can still do a wrap-up for all of us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll try and answer the question about how do you manage, you know, international, if there is a fiber cut. So typically, if you look at statistics, at least, you know, what we have been operating, most of the faults happen within probably, you know, between 50 and 80 nautical miles from the shore. And typically, if you declare a corridor of around that sort of a distance, and then you avoid fishery and certain other vehicle movements within that area, and if you're able to patrol that, mostly the probability of fiber cut comes from. I'm not saying, I'm just generalizing this answer. It's not just that it'll happen. So beyond that, there is already an agreement called UN clause, okay, which already sort of talks about how to handle any such event that happens in an international territory. So that's an association of countries, it's a UN-driven thing, association of countries. So there is a very clearly laid out mechanism by way of which this gets handled in that area. What is important is each country, how they handle. I think it's important for the Indian policy to sort of make the corridor within this territory. And India has another peculiarity, which is, there's a 12 nautical miles of territorial water, and then there's a 200 nautical miles of Indian economic zone, right? So then again, the question would be that what right do you have to go all the way up to 200 nautical miles and provide a corridor? So there are certain nuances that needs to be handled, but I think as long as we are able to handle a proper corridor without any vehicle movement for that distance up to wherever Indian government has the right, either 12 nautical miles or 200 nautical miles. Beyond that, there is an existing international agreement that exists.
Great, thank you. Suvesh?
Okay, I will address the question from the gentleman from PGCIL, because that's a topic of my interest. Indeed, submarine cables can be laid along with HVDC, submarine HVDC cables. They are being done in many cases. Even about 10 years back, I have seen such cables being laid from Morocco to Spain, from Tunisia to Italy, and from UK to Germany. The only limitation is the fiber cables, along with power cables, have to be unrepeated cable. That's the reason the length of those cables cannot be more than 300 to 350 kilometers. But I had the opportunity to work on a project to connect Mumbai and Oman for exporting power. And we had worked with two vendors, Prismian and Xterra, to check if I can make a repeated cable along with the HVDC cable. Yes, there was a proposal. They said we can do a custom build, a custom developed cable, which allows repeated submarine cable along with the HVDC cable. But for some reason, it didn't go forward. But yes, there's definitely a potential for India-Sri Lanka power line, which can carry a submarine cable, or even an India-Bangladesh cable through sea, which can carry a submarine cable, or India-Maldives cable, if the geopolitical situations permit. It is certainly doable. It is done across the world. And in India, we need to have those worked out going forward, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Abdul?
So, regarding the resilience, I have two points to make. One, that like any important critical facilities, there are agreement between the country not to harm in case of hostility, right? And I think ITU is already taking care of with having a body formed. Secondly, the problem that we are facing is cut in our own zones, right? So what industry is doing today, they want to complete the project with the existing facility. And then again, latching in another problem of having, cable cuts. So as Mr. Subes suggested that either some independent agency gets developed and develops some cable landing station, and then there is intervention by the government and ask all the operators to shift in due course to a zone which is having lesser activity. Perhaps of their own landing station may not shift, but with some direction it may shift. But before that, there should be a facility which gets developed. And like infrastructure provider, there can be some independent cable landing station providers, which will actually solve the problem of overcharging by the CLS station, which we have discussed today. So if independent cable landing station comes up, I think it may solve two issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you all for also keeping time as best as you can. And I'm going to thank you all and pass it on to Mr. Soni to give us a quick wrap-up summary of this excellent discussion. Thank you.
We had a really excellent discussion, and I would like to come to Mr. Vishy. He made a point that that within India there should be more of terrestrial cable, and there should be more of data centers and local web content, so that you have less of dependence on the international side of cables. At the same time, I also agree that at present we are doing well in terms of capacity. At present we have around 70% capacity of lit capacity is presently being utilized. And we have four very high capacity cables which are planned in 25, 26. So we are doing good, and at the same time we promote any of the international players to come in India, and we will provide all kind of regulatory support, whatever you want, and basically about the special planning which Mr. Suvesh was mentioning is that he talked about Vishakhapatnam, and there is a lot of talk which is going on. The government is trying to aggressively market that place so that there is a cable landing station in Vishakhapatnam, and I had chance to meet them once also. So about other things like land at discount cost, if it can be given by the local government to incentivize, that is one point. Then Mr. Suvesh had mentioned about stub cable. Yeah, there is a try recommendation on a stub cable, and we are working on that. And we are also working on CLS POP, that is point of presence, where in case you don't want to have a cable itself coming to you, you can have a cable from somebody, you can hire a dark fiber from somebody who is already having a cable, an ILDO having a cable. And we are also working on the domestic submarine cable side, wherein we interconnect the one point in India to the other point in India through the domestic submarine cable. So all these things are happening, and it has been a wonderful discussion with all the members, and it has been a pleasure to be with you, Sonia ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to everyone, please. Thank you, Nina, online as well.
Pleasure. Hopefully next time I'll make it there. I had a single
Thank
point
you.
of failure at Heathrow Airport as well.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed, Ms. Nina Cummins, for joining us from the virtual platform. I would request Ms. Sonia George to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of appreciation to our panelist, Shri Abdul Qayyum, advisor from TRI, to Mr. Suvesh Chattopadhyay, and we will be probably sending one to Ms. Nina. I would now invite Ms. Brigadier Anil Tandon to kindly come up and do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude to our chair and moderator, Brigadier Anil Tandon, to kindly come up.
Our chair, right?
Okay, okay. I thought we had presented one to Mr. Vishwanathan in the previous session, that's why. Okay, sorry, sir, I didn't know. And Brigadier Anil Tandon to present to our chair, Shri Rajesh Kumar Soni ji, DDG Career Services, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India, and to our distinguished moderator, Ms. Sonia George. Thank you, ma'am, for wonderfully. Brigadier Anil Tandon to kindly present it to the moderator also. Thank you. And Brigadier Tandon, kindly join our panelists for a group photograph, please. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly remain seated. We quickly will set up the stage and move into the next session. There is no break in between.
Do you see her? Here, let's make some space. You have to be in the picture.
Thank you, you're very kind. The delights of modern technology. Thank you so much.